Welcome to week 146 of Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
We finished episode 708, which originally aired Monday, May 11th, 1987. And just before this, we watched our Streets of San Francisco episode for the week. We are on episode 6 only. And A. Martinez was the main guy in it. And Carmen Zapata was in it, but not as his mother this time, as Mrs. Martinez. So, another show that they both appeared in. They did not have any scenes together in this one.
Now, surprisingly to us, she, as Misha said, did not play Cruz's mother. She played David Soul's mother.
David Soul, I guess, before his Starsky and Hutch. This was a 1972 episode.
Yeah, and this was a very different role than we are used to seeing A. Martinez, at least from Santa Barbara. In this one, he was the villain, and he was very scruffy with really wild hair and a beard, so not at all Cruz Castillo-like. A couple of episodes ago, we were talking about Guatemalan jade, because of course that is Lionel's latest passion. And I mentioned that it is actually a real thing, and it is actually the same as Burmese jadeite. It's just mined in Guatemala. And because the soil is a little bit different there, it is a slightly different color. And I actually brought a couple of samples of it, and you can see that it is a very sort of bluish color. So this is an absolutely real thing. It's not something that was just made up for the show. It was, as I said a couple episodes ago, probably something the writers had read about and thought it would be the kind of thing that Lionel would be interested in too.
And I'd never heard of it. Oh, by the way, we're recording this on July the 30th, 26?
2026.
The 42nd anniversary of the first episode of Santa Barbara. So I'm wearing my 60th anniversary of Disneyland shirt to commemorate it this week.
And I'm wearing my 30th anniversary of Cirque du Soleil shirt to, I guess, commemorate half of it.
Kane tells Eden he's going out for supplies. She asks him to phone Cruz, and he reminds her that she was planning to wait until she could walk again. Guess she agrees, not too reluctantly. Then Kane sends his friend Cliff in to say, "Oh, I'm a friend of Kane's, and I brought some supplies." And pretends they just got their signals crossed on who was getting supplies. Eden asks him to mail a letter for her, but he says, "Oh, I'm not going to be anywhere near the city for months, so I'm not going to take it." He also brings her a new newspaper, which has an article about the Capwell grant to the university in Eden's name. So she, I guess, gets a sense that they're moving along without her. Cliff then goes out and fills Kane in on Eden, how she acted to the idea of another person being aware that she's there. And the guy says, "Boy, I wouldn't mind playing doctor to a beautiful woman like that myself." So he's a bit of a creep. And then Eden tears up the letter. I guess she has decided it's better for everyone if she returns fully able to walk, or never returns at all.
And it occurred to me watching this episode, and I don't know if this is just because the writers kind of like to write these kind of characters or if it's intentional or whatever, but Kane actually has some features that are sort of similar to CC's in that he's very gruff and kind of manly and very masculine energy, but he's also very manipulative. And we've seen him really do a lot of tests on Eden with, starting a fire in a waste paper basket, now this little ruse with a newspaper. So it makes me think that maybe Eden will be able to get past him eventually, because she's used to dealing with her dad. So maybe she will be able to use some of the same tactics ultimately to deal with Kane.
Mason complains that Victoria didn't let him sleep in the same bed last night. She tells him that she thinks Cece's check is an advance on the inheritance, but he assures her it's a loan for an investment, but he can't tell her what it is. She does say, though, that she wants to make things work with Mason. Mason and Jeffrey each propose a different pharmaceutical company to Alex for their consortium to buy, but either way, they're fine with Alex's decision. And he assures Jeffrey that they can get to Cece without hurting Kelly. Keith reminds Gina that she still didn't get the name of that pharmaceutical company, even though he had to watch her make goo-goo eyes over Dr. Nicholas all night. And she makes a joke about getting some laundry detergent for him so he can wash out the spaghetti stains from the spaghetti that Pearl dumped all over him. Gina goes to the lab, of course, to try to get the info out of Dr. Nicholas, but all she comes back with is the fact that Mason showed up there, which Keith finds very suspicious. At Johnny's, Jake hands Lucy the phone. You'd think she'd stop answering the phone. And guess what? Dr. William Addison has found her again. Or Professor William Addison has found her again. Ted suggests to Jake to go into the horse breeding business together. Jake is a little concerned that 2 months' worth of training a horse and reselling it doesn't add up nearly to as much as Ted is putting in financially to buy the horse in the first place. But Ted says, sure, I think it's even, and we'll split the profits 50-50. And it sounds like Jake's actually going for it. Mm-hmm. It's nice that he's not always hot-headed now. Miss Norris knocks on Cruz's door. I thought she was going to try to buy his beach house, but he fails to answer. So she leaves again. He pours himself a new glass of the poisoned tequila, but is interrupted when Julia shows up to make him coffee. Then Ted visits to tell him that Lucy got another phone call. Then Miss Norris returns to pretend to ask directions, but even though she shouts through the door, he never opens it. And she leaves again, but this time finds the vial of poison in front of the door and wonders what it might be and leaves with it. Victoria visits, sniffs the tequila and grimaces, but doesn't pour it out. She tells Cruz that the money Eden left him was an indication of her desire for Cruz to keep on living. Julia brings Cruz some lunch and gets on Victoria's nerves with just a few somewhat minor comments. Julia mentions to Mason that Victoria's visit to Cruz really perked him up. Mason brings it up to Victoria when she fails to mention that she had visited Cruz and cleaned his place. Victoria says Julia didn't waste any time. And then she doubles over in pain. Baby-related pain, presumably. So, at the start of the episode, they were talking about, making things work, but now Mason's annoyed with her again for visiting Cruz and keeping it from him. Cruz yells at Keith for not putting more manpower on the Lucy Pickett case, but Keith says you can't expect to use any department resources unless you've got a badge. And Cruz says, well, you may live to regret saying that. Cruz then promptly goes home to come up with a new name for his brand new detective agency. The Last Hope Detective Agency. Now, we had thought about Cruz and Eden becoming detectives at one point. So I guess this will be Cruz's turning point. And hopefully he'll dump all that alcohol down the drain and turn around his life. Nope, he takes a drink of tequila and immediately collapses from the poison. Actually, not immediately. He stumbles around the apartment a bit, which is kind of funny because we watched the play Clue last night, and there's a character who takes about 3 minutes to die, and it's quite hilarious. But luckily, we had seen the Santa Barbara beforehand and didn't start laughing at Cruz's predicament. So hopefully, with this in and out of half the cast coming to visit Cruz every few minutes, someone will find Cruz before he succumbs to the deadly poison. Who do you think will find Cruz?
I'm going to guess Julia.
All right. I think I saw who it is just when I was browsing ahead to see what the comings and goings were, so I will not take a guess.
I am confident it is not going to be Eden.
That, I think, is safe to say. All right, week 146 continues tomorrow after we watch episode 709 of Santa Barbara. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Welcome to episode 709 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
We've seen episode 709 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Tuesday, May 12th, 1987. We just watched Bionic Woman, as we do every Wednesday. Welcome to episode 709 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara.
Hello.
We've seen episode 709 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Tuesday, May 12th, 1987. We just watched Bionic Woman, as we do every Wednesday, and I noticed Joe Harnell did the music for Bionic Woman. And of course, he's written the theme to Santa Barbara. Eden tells Kane about Clint's visit, and that she's decided it's kindest for her family to continue to think that she's dead. So that's convenient for the writers. They can stretch this out reasonably. Kane tells her that his legs were healed by herbs from jungles of Southeast Asia, and he rubs a concoction on her legs that he whipped up from some stuff he found in the jungles of Utah. Eden is quite certain that the same herbs he had in Southeast Asia are probably not available in Utah, but Kane doesn't seem to think that's going to be a problem with his magic herbs.
Can you imagine Kane with his own TikTok?
He says that he needs to make her walk again to repay a debt. Kane says, "For me, it was the war. There are things about myself I wish I didn't know. Hour after hour, day after day, you do what you have to do. Things happen, terrible things, that can't be excused by anybody's rules." It's kind of what I thought was going to happen with him. Although, admittedly, I did see this 40 years ago, and some of that must have remained in my head.
We're still puzzling over why he would be in Thailand.
He, at one point, towards the end of the episode, he starts crying into a piece of fabric that he then locks away behind a padlock. So I bet Eden breaks into that thing at some point and asks him about the weird piece of fabric. Probably some villager somewhere got killed by something he did or something of that nature. Mason calls Dr. Ballard. As you'll recall, Victoria had doubled over in pain. And he examines Victoria. And he says it could be stress. And no need to come to the hospital. You should be fine at home. Cece and Sophia have lunch with Alex Nicholas. And when Cece tries to toast to their partnership, Alex says that's a bit premature because he hasn't chosen a partner yet. Cece is angry when he finds out that there is still a competitor in the wings, and when he realizes that the other person bid $2 million, he realizes it's Mason. Cece learns that Mason has bought Syntrax. Sophia tells Cece that he's making it sound like Alex wants revenge on him for something. So I don't think Sophia knows the full details of this business deal that Alex and Cece were involved in. Or perhaps it's the Pamela thing. Or both. Or they're all intertwined. There was some Grant Capwell, Pamela, Cece thing, too, wasn't there? So there was always some kind of shenanigans going on back then. Cece confronts Mason. No, but first Mason tells Alex that Cece approached Simtrax to find out what's going on, but Alex says, no, I didn't say anything to Cece. Now, I don't think that's quite accurate, because with all his smirking and not answering Cece's questions directly about Mason, I think it's clear to Cece that Alex is entertaining the offer from Mason. But Alex makes it seem to Mason like, nope, Cece doesn't suspect a thing. And then Cece goes to confront Mason. But Mason says, oh, no, I only bought that company because I remember a few months ago you were so gung-ho about several pharmaceutical companies, and this was one of them. And, since it's not the one you got, I thought, I should get this. It could be a good investment. But Cece's not buying any of that. Mason gets rid of Cece by telling him that Victoria almost had a miscarriage earlier and shoves him out the door. Jane finds Brick playing a guitar, and they discuss hiring a band to play at Johnny's. I guess Jeffrey's piano playing days are behind him. She tries to get him to go to the beach party, but he points out that she should be dating younger guys. So this sounds like it's the start of Brick trying to sever things with Jane. But the next thing we see, he's at Amy's gravestone. And I think we see Amy's headstone for the first time. And somehow they made the letters bright so you can read them. But they're still too small for me to read, especially on the copy that we're watching. So maybe Santa Barbara Online has a nice close-up of what it says on there. We'll put it up. Still haven't done the Santa Barbara Cemetery episode for Amy. I guess I should get around to that now that I have a nice shot of a headstone.
Now, what do we think the potential is for a house band?
I don't know, because that would be a lot of, logistics just for the show to have a band permanently there. Maybe we'll have a guy who's the leader of the house band, and they're always just on the verge of finishing up whenever we see them. I don't know.
I'm thinking it might be another artist tie-in.
That could be. I know they have one coming up in the future with the Sophia and Cece storyline. So this could be another. This could be a short-term thing. We'll see if it's someone that is playing themselves and that has a record deal that they're trying to promote. He tells Amy that he's ready to move on, and Jane has followed him there. She claims not to have heard what he said, but he then asks her to have dinner with him. So I think it's the exact opposite of what we thought was going to happen at the start of the episode. It looks like Brick and Jane are going to be a thing. Mason blames Julia for Victoria's stress. Julia says, I'm lucky I don't have to be part of your illustrious family, and storms out on him. Cruz drinks the poison tequila. Miss Norris knocks on the door and hears him fall to the ground, so she breaks in and gets him to the hospital. And when he wakes up, she introduces herself as Eleanor Norris. Sophia and Cece arrive and shake her hand. Miss Norris is fascinated with Cece and says to him, I never dreamed that I would meet you. Later, Cece asks Sophia if Eleanor looks familiar. I've seen her somewhere before. What do you think that's about?
I don't know, but I feel like Miss Norris, she's claiming that she just happened onto this. So we, of course, know that she has been basically stalking Cruz for a while. And it makes me think that, she starts acting a little suspiciously in this episode, I think, in a noticeable way, because in a normal situation, if someone came by, they'd say, hey, how are you doing? I'm glad you're okay, and then move on. But she kind of sticks around, and people, I think, are noticing it a little bit.
Because she had popped up in, several different places. She was at the funeral, so maybe Cece saw her, skulking around the church. He was on that rooftop, but, maybe Keith will recognize her. Maybe Cruz will even recognize her. But, who's to say that Miss Norris didn't have reasons for being in all those places, especially if she's pretending to be a journalist like she was on the roof after Lucy's incident on the roof. Well, it's a good thing she is hanging around the hospital, because William Addison sneaks into Cruz's room when he's asleep and injects poison into his IV. Eleanor comes into the room and scares him off and unplugs Cruz's IV, but but she doesn't tell anyone she thinks there might be poison in it. And she just says, oh, I'll get a nurse to hook it back up for you. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there. Did she just unhook the IV as a excuse to chat with Cruz again and not realizing she accidentally saved his life, or what?
I'm assuming from this that William Addison has also been stalking Cruz, so he and Miss Norris are both stalking Cruz at this point, because, of course, this is way before the internet or GPS, so how else would he know that Cruz was in hospital, unless he was kind of watching him?
They may have been standing in adjacent trees around the beach house, peering through the foliage. Cruz says, twice you've shown up at a fortuitous time. Maybe you really are my guardian angel. Julia visits Cruz in the hospital, and Eleanor seems jealous, perhaps.
Well, we assume she's been watching Julia come and go from Cruz's house as well.
Yeah, that could be a reason for her jealousy. All right, well, I think we're going to be seeing Eleanor Norris in several episodes in a row now. She's finally getting ready for her story to ramp up a bit. So, one thing, Cruz once again in the hospital had that weird dream about Eden in the snow and the weird outfit that she's wearing, and it just kind of reminded me just for a second about the dream curse on Dark Shadows, where we were seeing this same dream episode after episode for months on end. So anyway, that's just a little parallel I thought of.
One thing that, we've been watching all these old shows, and I think we mentioned the A. Martinez appearance in Streets of San Francisco. But it's just really interesting to realize just how long a career some of these actors had before Santa Barbara, and just the great variety of roles they've played. So.
And we have a little surprise coming up on Friday, so that'll be something to look forward to. All right, that's it for the Tuesday episode. We'll be back after we watch the Wednesday episode, number 710. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Welcome.
Hello.
To episode 710 of Misha Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. We watched episode 710 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired May 13th, 1987. And we saw Lenore Kasdorf on the streets of San Francisco on Wednesday. The episode 1, season 1, episode 7, as Ms. Allen, cruise ticket seller. I think she might have only been in one scene there. Keith continues to complain about Gina's long lunches. Alex Nicholas gets Gina an apartment. Wow. Keith makes fun of her for being a kept woman. And it's not entirely clear from this if Gina thinks that's what it is or not. Haley is very upset when she finds out. And then Alex is annoyed to find that Gina has invited Ted and Haley over for a housewarming dinner. Haley talks Ted into going, but eventually he can't take it anymore and leaves, and Haley follows. And then Alex makes it known that he wasn't too happy that she invited them in the first place. He says, I want this to be a special place for us, a place where I can come, and you'll be waiting just for me. Gina says, if I didn't know better, I'd say you got this place so I could be your mistress. And Alex replies, I want us to be much closer. So I feel she's just, purposely deluding herself a little bit. But, that was a crummy motel that she was in.
Yeah, I don't know why all of a sudden everyone's being so judgy about Gina's arrangements, because, she's probably been in worse situations, and it's Gina, so.
I still have a feeling that Alex is just doing this for some sort of checklist of trying to get with all of Cece's exes somehow. So I feel like maybe Sophia will be on the list at some point.
And maybe Pamela.
And maybe Pamela. Jeffrey gets jealous of the photographer that is shooting Kelly for the ad campaign and fires him. Mr. Osmond says, we've been trying to get that guy for years, and fires Jeffrey. But Kelly talks him into hiring Jeffrey back by claiming that Jeffrey is the one who came up with all the good ideas for the campaign. which I don't think is accurate. And I think it's, kind of a poor way to do that. Like, that's just going to, like, she's relying solely on the fact that he can't fire her because she's CC's daughter. That's I feel, a poor way to start your career.
Yeah, I was actually quite cheerful when someone actually came and fired Jeffrey, because he's not really a great employee, in my opinion, certainly not attitude-wise. And it was kind of disappointing to see Kelly step in and sort of save him from that, when he seems himself to be not really very into this job. And really, we know he's got a great musical talent. Why not steer him into that, and if she cares about him that much, rather than just keeping him on there where he's just going to be undermining her, and obviously he's not a good fit. So
yeah, I mean, he kind of took it just because Alex told him to, right?
Yeah.
So that was when he hated Mason. I guess it's also about the CC revenge, but I feel like once that's over, he's got no reason to really stick around there anymore. Presumably it'll happen soon when the deal gets signed, whatever Alex's clever trick is to get CC to lose some money. So Jeffrey says, "Oh, you know what? I'll take the photos myself." And I was thinking, oh, they could get Nick Hartley to take the photos if they ever talked about him again. Jeffrey makes the arrangements for the photo shoot tomorrow on an island, but calls and says, "I won't need any crew on the boat. I will just man it myself." So I feel like that is going to lead to some trouble in some way.
You know, this actually reminds me, in a weird way, of an old Here's Lucy episode we were probably watching around the same time as this, where Lucy takes it upon herself to fix the car of her boss. And it's, to me, I know they're very different shows, but it's got the same vibe. And at this point, I take Jeffrey about as seriously as I would take Lucille Carter.
I don't remember not liking Jeffrey, but I really can't stand him right now. Ted finds a creepy tape from William Addison that was left for Lucy. Julia visits Keith to complain about the lack of protection for Cruz. Keith says, "Well, I looked into Addison. I am doing stuff behind the scenes, contrary to what you think. I'm looking into things, and he was released because he's a model prisoner, so I can't really act on anything Cruz says, because I think he's faking all of these attacks just so that we'll put some men on the case for Lucy." And then, of course, Keith says, "Why so concerned? Is Cruz on the list of possible daddies?" Which leads Julia to slap Keith. Eleanor comes home with Cruz. He was like, I didn't really need you to accompany me. And she makes up a reason why she wanted to go home with him. And then she tells him, "Oh, by the way, some guy tried to kill you last night." It turns out she hadn't told the police or anyone that William Addison had injected something into Cruz's IV. She just says, "Oh, yeah, I pulled it out, but I pretended you did in your sleep." So obviously that's a bit odd to do, and then not to tell anyone about till the next day. Then she pretends to find that vial of poison on the floor that she had previously found at the front door. And he says, "That's weird. The police swept the place." And she says, "Oh, they seemed to know you when they took you out of here, and they were so worried about you. I think they just did a terrible job searching this place." So, several not very, normal behaviors from Eleanor already. And I think Cruz will pick up. In fact, I think he has, because of what he says later. And then she wonders if the attack was related to his recent inheritance. And he wonders how she knows about that. And she just says that Capwells are very well known. Julia wonders where Eleanor came from. And then Cruz says there's something strange about her.
And it's interesting because a lot of the things she's saying are actually things that could be pretty easily checked. Mm-hmm. The police department is full of people that Cruz knows, and he knows their methods. And so he would know how they would conduct the sweep. He could talk to them about it. The whole thing about this information being made public, this is not the era of the internet where some random person could just, post something. He would be able to look and see what was actually in publications, and that would probably be the only way anyone would know, really.
And it's not clear whether she actually is a journalist or not, but if he remembers that she was there, on the rooftop, and she's not really a journalist, that's a very odd thing. Ted arrives with the tape, and Cruz decides to set a trap for William Addison. William Addison sneaks up to the beach house. He hears Cruz talking to Lucy inside and breaks in the front door silently, only to find that the voices are coming from a tape recorder, and Cruz and Julia are watching with binoculars from the car. However, they're shocked when Eleanor appears, skulking at his window, and then breaks into the beach house herself. Cruz races to the front door. Addison grabs Eleanor and holds a gun on her and says, "Castillo, I know you set this up. I'll trade your pretty friend here for Lucy."
So basically we've got two of Cruz's stalkers now trapped in the same house. It's kind of interesting, as we were saying last time, that they've never actually run across each other in their stalking of Cruz. Staking out his house.
So I feel like Cruz will not make the swap for Eleanor for Lucy. So this is going to be one of those siege things, I think, where Cruz sneaks in the attic or something, just like he captured that other guy a few weeks ago. We will see what happens there, and then Eleanor will have to explain why she was snooping around his house. She'll probably have something cooked up as to an excuse, though, that is just barely plausible. And, as if that wasn't an exciting enough thing to happen in the middle of the week, Lionel and Carolyn returned from Guatemala, and she was very impressed with how knowledgeable Lionel was down there. I think she said all the other people down there were impressed with him, too. She feels dizzy, but she puts it down to jet lag. They showed Julia a slideshow of their trip. Those were the days when someone would come home from a trip with rolls of film, have them developed as slides, and get one of those carousel projectors and put all the slides in and have friends over to watch the slides of their trip. I have cases and cases of them from my grandmother, which I have never tried putting together and watching. So maybe we should do that someday.
And the invited guests would drink many, many cups of coffee in preparation for this, because these were often rather long slideshows. And if you weren't there on the trip, you may not completely appreciate all of the images on them.
And of course, back in those days, you had no idea whether a picture would turn out or not. So if your only picture of that volcano was kind of blurry, it would go in the slide carousel. Lionel says, "We're going to be a happy couple for a good many years to come." And Carolyn wonders if it's weird for Julia hanging out with her sister's ex-husband and new girlfriend. But Julia says she hopes Augusta has found the same happiness as Lionel. Later, Lionel tells Carolyn that when he saw her on that plane, he thought, everything's going to be all right from now on. He asks Carolyn to marry him, and she collapses in his arms. I feel like everything's not going to be all right from now on.
I feel like perhaps she has a brain tumor or something, some sort of serious medical issue.
And I do wonder if that phone call a few weeks earlier, where we never found out what it was some tests coming back, and that maybe she's known about something for some time. So we will see what Carolyn has and how curable it is. And that is it for this episode, the Wednesday episode. We'll be back for Thursday's episode, number 711, after we watch it. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, we were a really extremely happy couple.
We're going to be a happy couple for a good many years to come, I'll tell you that. When I looked over on the plane and saw you sitting next to me, I thought everything is going to be right from now on, and it was.
Welcome back.
Hello.
This is episode 711 of Misha and Dianne Watch Santa Barbara. And episode 711 aired on Thursday, May 14th, 1987. Ted apologizes to Haley for calling Gina a kept woman. Haley says this is not the marriage she wants to be in. And Ted thinks that means she wants a divorce, which is clearly not what she meant. Ted can't understand why Jake doesn't want to accept his business proposal. And Haley says that she grew up the same way as Jake, and he obviously feels like Ted is offering him charity. To which Ted replies that maybe Haley and Jake are more suited to each other.
There's an idea.
Put a stop to this endless arguing. Cruz sends Lucy away in his car. So I made a mistake in the last episode. I said it was Julia and Cruz in the car, but it was Lucy and Cruz in the car. Eleanor manages to get out of William Addison's grip and lunges for the light switch and turns it off. I think she maybe saw a shadow or heard something that made her think that Cruz was outside the door, and she figured turning off the light would help. And Cruz bursts in, and I don't know if one gunshot went off or two, but when the lights came back on, William Addison was out the door and Cruz was lying on the floor of the beach house. Eleanor wants to take Cruz to the hospital, but he says, no, take me to the Capwells right away. He's going after Lucy. And when William Addison shows up at the Capwell guest house, he sees Lucy in a chair, and she spins around to reveal she's Cruz in a wig.
Praise you, son of a...
And that wasn't the funniest scene with the wig, because later when Keith is there saying, oh, I might have to arrest you if this turns out to, be a bad shooting since you're not a cop. Keith is fondling the wig throughout the entire scene. I believe he actually leaves with the wig. Ted finds Haley sitting with Jake at Johnny's. Lots of stuff happening at Johnny's lately. He tells them that Lucy's going to stay at her own apartment tonight, and they think that William Addison is going to pull through too. Did I forget to say that Cruz shot him when he whirled around? I was so excited about the wig, I forgot about the shooting. And then Ted says, I'll get out of your way. To which Haley shouts back after him, you're not in anyone's way. So whether anything's going to go on with Haley and Jake or not, Ted seems to think there is already. So Eden tries out her new wheelchair. Eden asks, is it something Kane or Kane something? To which Kane replies, just Kane. Which makes me think he made it up from the Bible because he must have killed someone that, he didn't want to or didn't want to have killed.
Or he's like one of those entertainers who only goes by one name.
Later, we see him snooping through his toolbox of memories. He's got some dog tags in his hand. I don't know if that was just one set. There seemed to be a lot of chain there. So I don't know if those were his old dog tags from the war, plus perhaps someone else's that is no longer with us.
Maybe the battalion he accidentally led into a field of landmines.
It's his entire battalion's dog tags. That could be. Landmine would be a reason to have a, spinal injury that like he had. He slams the lid shut. I feel like all this looking in and slamming is going to make Eden curious, and now that she's got a wheelchair, she might wheel herself over to that box of memories at some point. Eleanor thanks Cruz for saving her life, and he says that makes them even. And they have a discussion about the Chinese custom of being responsible for someone for the rest of their life if you save their life. So does that make them responsible for each other for the rest of their lives? Eleanor says, well, I guess I won't be seeing you again. And Cruz says, probably not. And she kisses him on the cheek and leaves. But does what a lot of people in soap operas do, Once the door's closed, she leans back against the door and thinks. So I don't know how she's going to wheedle her way back into Cruz's life.
Well, if this was Days of Our Lives, she would be telling her whole plan to a portrait.
I guess she could apply for a job somewhere where Cruz is, but... if he does start at that detective agency, she could be his receptionist. Who knows what her qualifications are. Keith brings Gina a kitten and tries to get amorous with her, and she knees him in the groin. At Johnny's, Jake refuses to take Keith's order unless he pays in advance, since he's been judged a high risk. I think Pearl concocted that to try and make Keith's life as miserable as possible. But Keith, even though it's down by the docks, which isn't that, as we found, not that easy to get to from anywhere in Santa Barbara, Keith seems to hang around there a lot on his lunch breaks. So maybe he takes a cab so he doesn't have to deal with that. Keith gets drunk and ends up talking Dr. Nicholas's ear off about Gina, and he seems quite surprised by all the amorous and body adventures that he relates to Dr. Nicholas, such as their time in the Capwell wine cellar. I never know if Dr. Nicholas is really surprised by these things or if he's just acting.
Now, we're thinking, I assume, that Keith is off the wagon because he's been drinking milk for the last few seasons, really.
Well, we haven't had that really, spelled out for us yet. Didn't they have champagne in the basement of the Capwells? I think he has drunk a lot. I don't think he has a drinking problem. Gina, he says when Gina shows up. The doctor here's not such a bad guy if you have a thing for warm cadavers. Back home, Gina tells Alex that the kitten was a housewarming gift from Haley. I don't think she wants Alex to know that her ex-lover has been showing up at the apartment that he has bought for her. Keith sneaks onto the property, and we find out that Gina is on the first floor. He snoops around and peers through the window, but Gina spots him and puts down the blinds. I don't know if this is a first-story apartment or if it's a bungalow or what it is. Lionel calls the doctor, whom he calls Jim the entire time, so I have no idea what his last name is, and says it appears Carolyn has the flu, but he'll put through her blood tests just in case there's something else. Later we see Lionel bringing her a tray in the room that she's in, and we were discussing what room that might be. We think it might be Lakin's bedroom. There was a bed on the left, and it's like a small bed, single bed, and was kind of a pink room. So we think it's Lakin's bed. Anyway, the doctor calls back and says, Lionel, there might be a problem. So something's wrong with Carolyn's blood. I think the ominous music when Carolyn fainted in the last episode might be enough to have told us, the viewer, that something was horribly wrong. Where do you think this is going, this storyline?
Well, I wonder if maybe she has leukemia or something like that, something that would have been sort of a terminal wasting disease, but not one that's going to make her look really awful.
All right, I do remember a little bit about this story. Actually, I remember two things. One of them is kind of interesting. So we will see what happens with that in just the next few weeks. I think the storyline will actually go quite quickly. So, and that is it for our Thursday episode. So we'll be back for the Friday, May 15th episode 712. Hopefully we'll see more of Eleanor and find out some more things. All right, we'll see you then. Bye.
Bye-bye.
And I forgot to mention we've got a little surprise showing up tomorrow. welcome back.
Hello.
We've watched episode 712 of Santa Barbara, which originally aired Friday, May 15th, 1987. And the episode starts with a mysterious blonde woman writing a letter that she addresses to Ted Capwell, and she seals it with a lipstick kiss. Haley tells Ted it seems like they manufacture things to pull them apart. Ted says, I think one of us has changed, and I honestly don't think it's me. Haley tells Jake that she feels like Ted's meant to be with someone else. CC confronts Alex and demands to know if Jeffrey is also in on the scheme. Alex denies everything. CC demands to know how Alex and Jeffrey twisted Mason's arm. Mason says, you're so put upon all of a sudden, and you've done nothing to bring it upon yourself. Kelly gives Ted the letter that's arrived that has the lipstick on it. Jeffrey tells Alex if Kelly is upset about them going after CC, he will just tell her about the burnt letters, and everything will be okay because they love each other. CC tells Kelly that Jeffrey is their enemy and she wishes that she weren't going away with him, but she blows him off and continues on to join Jeffrey on the boat. Jeffrey tells Kelly that he's going to pilot the boat to Santa Cruz himself. Of course, they've missed the news report that a storm is coming and a small craft warning has been issued. Anyway, none of that is the reason that Jeffrey runs the boat aground because he's busy kissing Kelly. It turns out they're not on Santa Cruz, however. They're on Anacapa. Luckily, the Capwells have a cabin there, but unluckily, it's a 7-mile walk uphill. And I have here this map of those Channel Islands. And there's Catalina, and there's Anacapa, and there's Santa Cruz, and there's Ventura, and there's Santa Barbara. So they're stuck on that little island there. Julia finds out that she must go to Eureka to visit a client. Now, she's already got a ton of stuff that she's been doing. Plus, she's got court in the morning. And Mason agrees to go in her place. Mason tells Victoria there's nothing going on between him and Julia. And Victoria says, yeah, that's true. I guess no one would want to have an affair with a pregnant woman. Julia's boss tells her that she must be the one to go to Eureka, not Mason. So she leaves a message for Mason at home, at the office, and at the airport. When she arrives at the suite in Eureka, Mason is already there, because he took the Capwell jet. They argue, and Mason storms out. But the real Storm has other ideas, and the inn is full, so he returns. Victoria hears that Julia has gone to Eureka and suspects that she is with Mason. So she rushes to Julia's house and bangs on the door, demanding that Julia open up. But nobody's home, and, as has happened several times lately, Victoria collapses, calling Cruz's name. I mean, he does live next door, so I could see why she would do that.
It's interesting to me. One of the things I like about this show is it actually shows lawyers sometimes being really busy and in a more realistic way. And it is surprising to me that Victoria did not ever get the memo that lawyers keep long hours. So she seems to be constantly surprised when Mason has a lot of work to do.
Ted opens his letter and finds an invitation to meet him at the gazebo at 3 o'clock. He arrives to find a blanket draped over a cage with a pigeon in it. Well, who else could it be, says Ted, and Lakin Lockridge appears. We have a new Lakin Lockridge, Susan Marie Snyder. I know I would have been very upset at the time that Julie Ronnie hadn't returned, but I didn't think Susan Marie Snyder did too bad of a job as the new Lakin. What do you think?
Yeah, I thought she was fine. When you asked me off camera what I thought your surprise was that you'd mentioned in our last podcast, I thought it might be Augusta coming back, but my second guess was Lakin.
You got it. Not dead on, but one off. Guess what? She's gotten a divorce from, I think she said the guy's name. It started like it sounded with a T, but I didn't quite make it out.
I think he was a ski instructor or something, so it didn't sound like they were really terribly that well suited anyway.
And she moved to New York and lived with Augusta for 6 months. Sophia thinks that Jeffrey sent them the music box as a wedding gift and not Mason. She recalls to Cece that Jeffrey was playing that song on the piano one time and was very cagey about it when she asked him what it was. Cece tells Sophia that, no, he's figured it out. Alex was in love with Pamela, and he, Mason, and Jeffrey are teaming up to destroy him for revenge. And Sophia says, revenge for what? To which Cece says, well, no idea. What could it be at all? Cece summons Alex to the mansion. He thanks Alex for his gift, but I don't think Alex actually admits to sending it. He just says, I expect you never to waste my time like this again. Cece says, Alex, this isn't over. Dear boy, I'm not an easy kill. And there's lots of thunder and lightning, because as we mentioned earlier, there's a storm around Santa Barbara. Lionel asks Alex to take a look at Carolyn's blood work, because he's an expert in the field of virology, and maybe he can see something that Carolyn's doctor didn't. And Alex, after a little pushback, agrees. Lakin tells Lionel that she might stay in Santa Barbara, and he tells her about his trip to Guatemala. Haley arrives at Johnny's, and Lionel asks if she's heard that Ted got married. Later, Ted comes upon Lakin hiding naked in the bushes because she went skinny dipping, didn't realize the gardener was coming that day, and ran into the bushes so she wouldn't be seen, and she's been sitting near the gazebo for an hour, hoping someone would come by. Well, luckily there was a blanket on that pigeon cage, and Ted wraps Lakin up in it. But as it has been raining from the storm, the gazebo floor is a bit slippery, and Lakin slips and falls into Ted's arms just as Haley shows up at the gazebo. Ted says, I want you to meet an old friend of mine, actually a neighbor. This is Lionel Lockridge's daughter. And Haley says, Lakin. And Lakin says, I've really been wanting to meet Ted's wife. I feel like this new skinny dipping Lakin that's been to New York for 6 months might be aggressively interested in Ted again.
Yeah, I have to say, I guess her story was plausible about the being caught out by the gardener, but I do feel like if she had lived in that house for most of her formative years, she would have known other ways to get back to the house.
And, well, there was a tunnel at one point. When Ted says hears that she'd been skinny dipping, he had said, you were scared to put on a bikini last time you were here. And Lakin says, I spent an entire week at Fire Island last year. So I think the writers are signaling a change in Lakin Lockridge's personality, at least when it comes to matters of romance, since she's now had and discarded one husband already. So I feel like Ted and Lakin, Jake and Haley, this might be a very obvious, repairing that everyone would be happy with.
Now, I had always been under the impression that Fire Island was a party place for gay men more than other people, but maybe I'm wrong, or maybe its reputation has changed over the years and it was a little different in the 80s. I don't know.
I don't know anything about it. Maybe Lakin will tell us more. So I'm excited we have at least one of the Lockridge grandkids back. She does mention going to visit Grandma Minx, but we do not see her, and we are only going to see Dame Judith Anderson one more time, so I hope that for her final episode she does have some scenes with the new Lakin at least. Sadly, we have Warren off the picture, off the canvas at this time, so we won't have that full family back for a family photo ever again. Oh, and that is it for this Friday episode. This was actually quite an exciting Friday, even though it was probably not written as a Friday episode. And that finishes up week 146, and for this week, then I'm wearing my 60th anniversary of Disneyland shirt. We mentioned that this year, 2026, we've had the 60th anniversary of Dark Shadows, and we've got the 60th anniversary of Star Trek coming up in a few weeks, and it's the 100th anniversary of NBC this year. Still waiting to see if they do a special of some kind. Will they feature Santa Barbara? We'll let you know. And that's it for this week. We'll be back for week 147. We'll see you then.
Bye-bye.
You were the one that left here all abuzz yesterday with one objective: to find out who was going to get rich manufacturing this stuff, and then we were going to jump on the bandwagon. Excuse me.
Who needs the bandwagon? I've got the Wagon Master.